Hello, this is wmpyr once again here to revisit the MMA fighter versus Tai Chi master video. Okay, just to share my 2 cents again, but this time I want to take a different approach and say, what if I was the one that was fighting the MMA fighter? What would happen? What kind of approach would I take, and things of that nature. So let's get right to it. First thing, let me just say flat out clear that I think I would lose to the MMA fighter. Why? Because from my understanding, that guy was an ex-pro fighter. And when I look at my own background, I never got to that kind of level. I was never a pro fighter. I was not even an amateur fighter. So I never got to that level. So just that alone, he's has the advantage right there. So just because of that, I'd say I would lose because he's a better fighter than I am. Okay. My strategy essentially is first, you got to know your opponent, right? You hear about that in the martial arts all the time. You need to know your opponent. So because of that, I feel like I kind of know what he's going to do because I have MMA training, period. So Muay Thai, kickboxing, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, those are the two things that I really focused on. But I have actual MMA training, I have wrestling training, I have boxing training. I have a little bit of those other things too, but mainly, like I said, my focus was Muay Thai, kickboxing, and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu back in the day. Years ago, that's what I did alongside my Filipino martial arts training. But I really liked Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. So, just for that reason alone, I feel like I'm going to be better prepared than, let's say, the Tai Chi master, because I know what to expect. I know the kinds of moves that this guy is going to be using on me. I know the defense to it. It doesn't mean that I'm going to be able to pull it off, but at least I have a clue. So because of that, yeah, I feel like I'm going to be better prepared, just knowing what to expect and stuff. And then the other aspect is, no matter what martial arts background you come from, right? It doesn't even matter. It could even be. It doesn't have to be a traditional martial arts like Tai Chi, Wing Chun, Taekwondo, Aikido. It doesn't even have to be a traditional martial art. It could still be a combat sport like Judo, Sambo, MMA. It could be any of those, but the main thing is, how much work have you done going from the knowledge that you get there in those arts, the knowledge that you get, and then transferring that to the application of knowledge. How much have you done there as far as applying the stuff that you learn? So when you're talking about fighting, when you're talking about actually performing, right? Whether it's self-defense or it's a challenge match, either way, you're talking about using it for real. You're not talking about studying it. You're not talking about how well you could talk about it or how well you know the technique and the strategies and all that stuff. It's not about that. It's about, you don't even have to know that stuff. You don't even have to know, like if you're doing a rear naked choke, what exactly anatomically are you attacking? What is the proper choke? None of that stuff really matters. So someone over here who's learning this stuff, who's studying this stuff, would I would think, if they're at a quality, they'll know the karate. What am I exactly doing? How long does it take for the brain to shut down? Those are the kinds of things. How is it done incorrectly versus correctly? What part of my arm am I exactly using? Whereas the person who's more concerned about just applying it, they don't care if it's off, if the chin isn't right at the bottom of the elbow right here, if it's a little off, it doesn't matter. You get the choke, you squeeze it. Back in the day, it's probably harder now because everyone's knowledge and skill level has gone up. But back in the day, when grappling pretty much just started here in the US, where UFC just occurred, so back in the 92, 93, or around that time, I was grappling because after watching the first UFC, my buddies and I got into the backyard, and then, we would grapple, this kind of thing. And when we did that, I dominated all my friends because not because I knew the technique, because my technique was, now I look back on it, I was doing it wrong. It wasn't very technical, but it didn't matter. I was determined. So I was tapping out my friends that were, some of them were over 200 pounds. And at the time I was like 130 pounds soaking wet, and I was getting them in chokes. Yeah, I didn't know the difference between crushing the esophagus versus doing a proper blood choke. I didn't know the difference, and I was just getting it and just squeezing as hard as I could. But the main idea was determination and not quitting, just, being super aggressive and focused. So that's more along the lines of application and less along the lines of knowledge, because my knowledge was not very high. But could I fight? Yes. Could I use it? Yes. You see, so that's a big difference right there. Yes, that is an extreme example, but I hope you guys can understand that there is a difference between knowledge and applied knowledge. So someone who works on just application, the fighter, is a person that maybe the technique may not even be perfect, but more importantly is, can they fight? Can they fight for the technique? By fighting, they're able to increase opportunities for that technique to occur, for them to actually try and do the technique onto the other person. If you don't know how to fight, then you don't know how to create opportunities for yourself. And even if you have like the world's best technique and you're the best at it, you may never go into a situation where there's a chance for that technique to even come up. So you just, what we saw with the Tai Chi master versus the MMA fighter, where he just got punched up and got defeated. He didn't even really get a chance to do his offensive move. We never even really got to see that. Why? Because he didn't know how to fight. He didn't know how to make an opportunity for that to happen. First, you have to survive, neutralize the other guy's attack, and then start creating opportunities. You start setting them up. We never got to see that. Why? Because that's not what he trains in. That's not what he does. So if he got to do the technique, I'm sure he could do it very, very well. I'm giving the benefit of the doubt. Maybe not, but let's just say if he really is a Tai Chi master, then you'd think that if he had the opportunity to do it, and I've seen some amazing, amazing stuff with the so-called internal Chinese martial arts, where I do remember a guy, he was a Bagua guy, and I said, how does the internal stuff, how does it work in a real fight? And he said, okay, well, take a stance. So I took a stance, and he said, okay, I'm going to hit you right here on your arm. So my arm was shielded, and he was like, I'm going to hit you right here. And it was placed against my body. And I said, okay, sure, yeah, go ahead, hit me. And he did. He hit me, and the force went through my arm, and I felt it directly in my organ. It felt like because of the way that he struck me, it was a palm strike. He knew how to make it go directly into the organ and bypass my arm shield. And that's what happened. And I was like, wow, that's super impressive, Now, how much of that can he do in an actual fight? And even if he did, how much damage is that going to cause? Maybe not enough to win a fight, depending on who the opponent is. Can it help him? For sure. That skill, for sure, could help him without a doubt. Is it enough to instantly win the fight? No, I don't think so. So I do feel that like a lot of the expectations and stuff is a little to the point where people are expecting supernatural stuff. But that doesn't mean that the actual technique and the style isn't legit. So I believe that Tai Chi is legit. You just have to get a guy who knows how to make those Tai Chi techniques go from knowledge into applied knowledge. And this dude that we saw was definitely, sadly, he was not the guy for that, So anyway, that's it for now. Thank you for listening, and take care, folks.